On Thursday, July 4th, 1996, it was a warm 75 degrees. While most folks were making preparations for celebrating Independence Day, one local fisherman decided to take his boat out on the water for a quick trip and happened upon a cooler floating in the middle of the ocean. Unbeknownst to the fisherman, this discovery will make trial history in a case that didn't have a body or a weapon, not even a witness. Delaware is one of the original 13 colonies, and being the first to ratify the U.S. Constitution in 1787, earning it the nickname the First State. And being the first to ratify the U.S. Constitution in 1787 and the nation's founding. Delaware is the second smallest state in the U.S. in terms of landmass and population. The number one title goes to Rhode Island. Delaware is generally a flat state with minimal high elevation points. And due to its size, literally being off the coast, it makes getting from point A to point B relatively easy. And it's also referred to as small wonder. Delaware doesn't have sales tax, and its corporate income tax policies are attractive to many businesses throughout the nation. In fact, the DuPont Company, who is a global conglomerate with interests in various industries, was founded in Delaware and have played a major role in the state's economic history even to this very day. Wilmington, Delaware is home to quite a few financial institutions and have a well-known impact in the financial services sector. It's no wonder many Fortune 500 businesses choose to incorporate in Delaware due to its corporate-friendly laws and established legal precedent. So, here's an interesting secret I just learned if you're not familiar with the Northeast.
Gotta tell you a secret.
Delaware is known amongst locals for its picturesque beaches along the Atlantic Ocean, particularly in towns such as Milford, Milton, Lewis, Rehoboth, Dewey, and Bethany. Sorry to the Delawareans for sharing the secret,
But I'm not very good at keeping secrets.
but I'm sure you'll be fine, trust me.
What can we say about this guy?
And with tourism being a booming industry, especially in the summer months, Delaware has gained a lot of recognition for its efforts to promote cycling as a mode of transportation by investing in the infrastructure and other initiatives to make it a more bicycle-friendly state amid the traffic. And here you have it. A few beaches along the Delaware coast, right down Route 1. Can't miss it. A lot of hustling and bustling, many things to do, plenty of things to get into. No shortage of ideas, maybe parking. That's another story. If you're ever in the area, get on a ride or two. Enjoy yourself. Go for a stroll along the pier. Try some of those boardwalk fries. I've heard a lot about it. Maybe even that funnel cake. Yeah, there it is. Something like that. Yeah, you can sign me up. Our research doesn't end here. It takes us back to Wilmington, Delaware, summer, June of 1996. And when we talk about the movers and the shakers, we can't have that conversation and not talk about the man himself, Thomas J. Capano. Tom was born in 1949 into the Capano family dynasty. The Capanos owned one of the largest construction companies in the state, money, connections, and influence were part of Tom's upbringing. He went to law school, and by the 1980s, he had risen in Delaware's legal and political world. He served as chief counsel to then Governor Mike Castle, advising on state business, legislation, and appointments. Colleagues described him as brilliant but arrogant, a man who commanded respect in court and in the boardroom. He was also deeply connected to Wilmington, Delaware's society, serving on boards, prosecutor, city solicitor, political advisor. Tom cultivated power and prestige throughout his professional career and his personal life. Tom is the guy that you wanted on your side, cultivating an image of power and refinement. In his marriage, his wife raised 4 daughters, together in an elegant mansion. Yet, behind closed doors, he lived recklessly, indulging in affairs and controlling the women that he dated. And here we have Anne Marie Fahey. Comes from a modest background, hard-working and determined Irish Catholic family. She was born in 1966, the youngest of 6 children. Losing her mother at the age of 9 left a scar, one she'd carry into adulthood. Anne Marie grew into a tall, graceful woman, standing at about 6 feet, bright, beautiful, stylish. Her smile hid her insecurities. To her friends, she was loyal, funny, and down to earth. But in her private diary, she wrote about loneliness, self-doubt, and her need for independence. She longed for a healthy relationship and stability. Nonetheless, she worked hard and built a career in the state government. By 1994, she had landed a coveted position as the Delaware's then governor, Tom Carper's administration, as his scheduling secretary. Then, she will soon cross paths with Tom Capano. And here's where our story began. The game of cat and mouse, betrayal, and the greatest loss of all. Okay, now that we know 2 of our main players, how did we get from here to there? How did something go so wrong? I don't want this to sound too cavalier, but their meeting was bound to happen. As we established, Anne Marie was the scheduling secretary for Delaware's then governor, Tom Carper. Tom Capano, himself being a lawyer and always in the know, was always at fundraiser events. Anything political, Tom was there. It was a matter of time before they ran into each other. Standing at almost 6 feet, tall, brunette, attractive, it's not going to be easy hiding. Safe to say, Anne Marie stood out. And she caught Tom's eye. And Tom is the kind of guy. He see it, he like it, he want it, he's going to get it. That's how Tom lived. He was arrogant. You can't tell Tom what he can't have. By the way, Tom had his plate full, being married, separated, long-time mistress, and a multitude of girlfriends. It's just another conquest for Tom. Tom is the guy, I gotta have her. She's mine. Remember, it's 1996. I remember where I was. Do you remember where you were in 1996 and what you were doing? You too young to forget and you too old not to remember. Now I'm going to ask you a question. Let me know in the comments. Let's be fair. Be honest. What would you do? You're dealing with a man like Tom Capano, who's clearly not the average bear. High powered, high caliber, high status, well dressed, well spoken, manicured. The guy is polished. You can say no, but a guy like Tom, he's of the old school of thought. Persistence beats resistance. That just piques his interest. And he believes, I just need to change my approach. It's just a matter of time. This is that cat and mouse game he likes. Now remember, it's 1996. That's crucially important. We're talking about a man that have unlimited resources, money, power, respect. He's not a player in the game. He set the rules of the game. He tells you what the pace of the race is going to be. He moves on his own time. Now, is Tom every woman's cup of tea? Probably not. But with a man like Tom that checks a lot of boxes, showering you with expensive gifts can make a lot of things happen. I mean, think about it. Tom can make your life more comfortable than what it already is. Now, I wasn't there, but I can only imagine the conversation going somewhere along the lines of, Tom makes a good case on why he's a good catch. One, he's Tom Capano. Hello. Marital status? Well, don't worry about that. It's complicated or separated or whatever Tom said. But don't worry your pretty little head about that. Children, well taken care of. Again, that's a non-factor. You're asking the wrong questions and you worried about the wrong things, baby. But here is some news you can use. Tom got a thing for you. He's fond of you. He's not shy, he's bold, and he's letting you know. This is what it can be. Let's go through the list. Whining, dining, big homes, fancy cars, trips anywhere. Tom can make it happen. He has the availability in his schedule. And he could do it. And he could do it with you. If you don't show up for work tomorrow, that's not a problem. He can call your boss. Remember, your boss is his boy. Hey, Tom, she's with me. She'll be back tomorrow or next week or whenever I bring her back. He's famous in all of the relevant circles with all the major players. He's a power player. He's here. He's there. He's the man everywhere he stands. He's the go-to guy. There's a lot of perks in that. He's flexing his influence, trying to impress you. And not for nothing, this guy likes me. Well, you can color me impressed. He's showing up constantly at your office, unannounced, no appointment required. Hand-delivering gifts. He can do that. Remember, he's Tom Capano. He likes you, and he was once the political advisor of the former governor, and he's in the know with this governor. Tom Carper is his boy. So him making the case for himself is looking real good right about now. He can offer a lot of stability and security. Saying no is becoming more and more of a challenge. At the end of the day, though, who really knows what he said? We'll never know. We can only speculate. But what we do know is that she eventually said yes. And I only bring this up because I remember people giving the memory of Anne Marie a hard time back then for her decision to be with Tom. You only know so much about a person, right? If you was outside 1996, you know what I'm talking about. At the end of the day, you say to yourself, he got it going on. Why would he lie? Remember, the guy is a lawyer. He can make a good case for himself. Anne Marie was swept off her feet. You would be too. I know I would. Yeah, I said it. I admit it. I would be. But here's the thing. I'm not a 6-foot beautiful brunette with dark features working in the governor's office either. So there's that. I can't judge her decision. What I can do, I can share this with you. If the roles were reversed, I'm picking up everything she putting down. You buying? Yes, I'm meeting you for drinks. Happy hours between 4 and 7. I'll see you there. Matter of fact, what time you picking me up? You buying? Yes, I'm meeting you for dinner. Where we going? What we eating? Yes, I'm catching that flight. Someplace warm. A movie? You know how much tickets cost? Damn right I want to catch that movie. What time does it start? And definitely meet me at the car dealership. Yeah, that one right there. The green one. Yeah, you can sign me up, hoss. Being honest with myself, I'm telling you right now. Yes, ma'am, I would have been a yes man in that situation. But that's just me. Remember, in the comments, tell me what you would have done. Nonetheless, she was on cloud nine. We know it because she wrote about it in her diary. Quote, I am obsessed with this relationship. It is sick, sick, sick. I know it and I am powerless to stop it. End quote. That statement she wrote is so alarming. Sounds like she knows this relationship is toxic, but hindsight is 2020. Well, we're going to keep moving forward. According to witness testimony, Tom treated women like assets, possessions, trophies, a collection. They're his prize, his arm candy. But you know something? Tom had a lot of support because everybody knew. How can they not know? Of course you know what Tom is doing. You know what he got going on. They talk about it. They brag about it. It's the thing to do. Everybody knows. Somehow Anne Marie got wind of this. Maybe because Tom was braggadocious, nonchalant. Clearly, once he get it, he got it. Now he don't care nothing about it. But that was the turning point. No doubt about it, Tom was successful. And Tom was also successful being a ladies' man, a serial philanderer. She saw a different side of Tom. Now, it's hard to see somebody in a different light, especially when you realize you're the one being played. Remember, Tom's colleagues all spoke about how brilliant he is. They also spoke about how arrogant he is. The guy was extremely flamboyant, so he would flaunt his stuff right in front of your face. Especially if he's feeling how he's feeling, that's what you're getting. And then she realized this guy is nothing that I thought he was. He's nothing that I need, nothing that I want. As a matter of fact, he's not even something that I like anymore. I'm over it and I want to be done with it. Besides, Tom is a man who didn't need another girlfriend. According to court documents, he's had multiple relationships throughout the tenure of his marriage, many of them with overlapping timelines, including one long-term affair lasting over a couple decades. So overall, Anne Marie understood her worth. She wanted out. As she stated in her diary, quote, Tom controls the strings. I am weak. I cannot break free. He manipulates me and I let it happen. End quote. The security and stability that Tom offered, all that stuff is false. And it comes at a cost. Giving up your autonomy. And it isn't worth the chaos that comes with Tom. And so she found out that the fine wines, dinners, gifts, trips, and being controlled, it's not worth it. It never is. You have to find a way out. All right, so naturally, she's upset because she found out she's just a conquest. All the time that you're putting into this fake relationship is just a joke. You can find someone else to better invest your time with. It's hard to face the day when you realize you're the butt at the end of everybody's joke. You've been played, and everybody knows. You're the last one in on the joke because you found out you are the joke. Everybody knew this was going on. Everybody knew he was a player. Your boss knew he was a player. You're the only one that didn't know he was a player. That's how come you got played, and everybody around you let you get played. No one thought enough about you to inform you of his womanizing reputation. A real person, a real friend, a real lover with true love. That's all that she wanted. That's something that we all can appreciate because that's something we can all relate to. She didn't want to be anybody's fool anymore. She didn't want to be a pawn in his game. You want to take control over your life again, so you can't blame her for wanting to get out of the situation. Yeah, Tom, we get it. You the man, big baller, shot caller. But also, according to an entry in her diary, quote, he is controlling, manipulative, and a jealous maniac, end quote. Anne Marie was successful in doing what she set out to do, break free from Tom. She wanted more, so therefore she went out and she found herself a new man, someone she can call hers, someone to feel at home with. But, as Tom saw he was losing control of the situation, really the problem was losing control over her. He began popping up at the office even more so than ever, showering her with more gifts. But it didn't have the same effect as it once did before. So that made Tom rethink his strategy. If I can't have you, then no one will. Because the only time you leave this relationship is when I dismiss you. You don't dismiss me. And of course, this has 100% ego written all over it. He couldn't accept the rejection. He began popping up at the office even more so than ever before. She wasn't interested anymore. She don't want nothing to do with you. Keep your money, keep your gifts, keep the fine wines, and keep the trips. She wasn't interested because she sees who you really are. As far as she was concerned, you're not a good person. That's the bottom line. Being polite about the situation, you're a fraud. Now, let's be clear about this other glaring fact. People in and around the office know that you two were dealing with each other. They know that you're no longer involved. You don't want to be involved with him. How can he continue to pop up at the office? He can do that because he's Tommy Boy. Remember, your boss is your boss. Your boss is not my boss. Your boss is my guy. Now, we all know when you're dealing with someone who's wrapped up in themselves the way he was, seriously, one way to get them off your back is to let them know, hey, I'm seeing somebody else. Oh, man. Once you do that, that sends the person in a downward spiral. Lo and behold, it threw Tommy Boy into a fit. Some people can't accept the fact that you moved on. He was one of those people. He can't accept that you leaving him behind because Tom wants to be the only man in your life, even though you're not the only woman in his. But you're not supposed to think about that because as far as he's concerned, he has everything that everybody would want. And he's used to women chasing after him. How he hook you, it's a manipulative tactic because you're easily distracted. You're busy focusing on all of the big things that are happening. You're unfortunately leaving yourself open to be played by manipulative people such as this. By the time you figure out what's going on, the person already have their hooks in you. Despite all of his advances, she stood her ground by telling him no. Ouch. That rejection went up as good as a stone balloon. Even though he has a multitude of women to choose from, he's worried about her. He's hyper-focused on Anne Marie because she's the one that got away. She's the one that told him no. And he can't let that go. So, because it's about the power, it all goes back to the power. It's always been about the power. I don't have to remind you, by all accounts, everyone described Tom as a brilliant lawyer. Therefore, we know he knows how to make a case. We went over that earlier, remember? So he took advantage of her trusting nature, and in that making a case, despite her better judgment, she said yes anyway. Damn. But you know one of the things that I thought about in reviewing this case? If it were me, and again, this is if it were me, right? I wouldn't think that there's any harm going out to dinner because, now hear me out. We're talking about a person who don't seemingly have everything. This is an individual that does literally have everything. We're going to a public place. I have to show up for work tomorrow. So going out to, look, I made it very clear earlier. I'm going to go get that meal. But that don't mean we're going to make something shake later on. What harm can it do? Besides, people know where I am. I wouldn't think there would be anything nefarious on the other side of this evening. And as she wrote in her diary, he's controlling, he's manipulative, he's a jealous maniac. She's afraid of him. But, again, we're talking about a public place and a person that have everything. This person isn't going to do anything stupid that's going to risk their career, their livelihood, their lifestyle. That is something you would logically think. How wrong would I have been? Damn. As it all turns out, she gave him way too much credit, and a dinner date turned into the Last Supper. On Thursday, June 27th, 1996, Tom and Anne Marie arrived at Ristorante Panorama. They arrived between 7 and 8 p.m. Anne Marie had a light Caesar salad and a crab cake appetizer. Tom had a rack of lamb with all the trimmings and all the fixings. And they shared a bottle of red wine. This is the definition of premeditation. He knew exactly what he was going to do. He planned everything out beforehand. He knows this is her last meal. By 9:30, they left the restaurant heading back to Delaware. For some odd and apparent reason, they had to stop at Tom's house. Who knows? Maybe Tom, again, putting up an eloquent case. Hey, why don't we go to my house so we can finish our conversation? Because I'm not finished with you yet. Putting together the final pieces was getting her alone, and he successfully accomplished that. No, it's my house because it's more private rather than your place because it's an apartment. The guy didn't want to be seen, which is odd because you just left a public place in Philadelphia. And let me just share, Philadelphia, 1996, June 27th, everybody's outside. There's no getting around that. Her days were numbered. By the next day, Friday, June 28th, Anne Marie didn't show up for work. No call, no show. First strike. By that afternoon, she missed a planned lunch date with friends. Second strike. Later that day, she didn't show up for a family planned beach trip. And that's 3. That is not like her. Extremely uncharacteristic of her. Immediately, they knew something was wrong because she's actually tight with her family and enjoys spending time with her family. Excuse the inflection in my voice. I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just saying. But we're going to keep going. Her siblings knew instantly that something was wrong. By Sunday, her brother filed a missing persons report with the Wilmington Police Department. And at first, the police treated it as a possible voluntary disappearance. Oh, come on. But for what? Why? What would be the why that do people voluntarily disappear? Of course they do. It happens quite often. More often than we'd like. But in this situation, come on, fam. That's just not adding up. The math don't check out on this one. Her family continued to push the issue. Therefore, the police did a welfare check. First and foremost, arriving at her residence, her car, still here, parked out front. Green Toyota Camry. There it is, right there. If she had chosen to leave, she would have taken her car. Where are you going without your car? And upon entering her apartment, they discovered signs of foul play, such as her purse, her keys, all of the things that women tend to carry with them. It's all here in the apartment, undisturbed. And none of this made sense. For a person like Anne Marie, by all accounts, she was a responsible, punctual, and careful person. If she had chosen to leave, she would have at least taken these items. And the authorities have seen this enough to automatically determine this is not a voluntary disappearance. So you know what this means, right? Wilmington, Delaware's finest, they have PC. Probable cause to do some snooping, and you can best believe they're gonna snoop. And, they found her diary. And in that diary, she spoke on her love interest. In the beginning, how things were so great. Later on, you can see the descent from adoration to admonishment. However, she did write about Tom's jealousy of her newfound happiness. We're not going to talk about that guy because he has no significant impact to the case outside of infuriating Tom to a point where it drove him to the brink of madness or stupidity. Maybe it's a combination of the two. And she also put in the diary Tom not being the man she thought he was, Tom being manipulative, a jealous maniac, and how she wanted to break free of the relationship that she realized wasn't a relationship at all. But she was successful in doing so, and how upset Tom was at the fact that she didn't want to see him anymore. While police were still pursuing the voluntary disappearance angle because they had to. At this point, they didn't have anything to outright say what happened. What we have, a lot of suspicion, but no hard evidence. But her family wasted no time. They got right to it. Organized search parties, putting up Anne Marie's photo throughout the area, searching for clues that would lead them to her. This was during the 4th of July weekend, and it was all over the news. Folks traveled from far and wide, converging on the Delaware area to participate in the search. Oddly enough, while the search party was underway in Delaware, simultaneously in Stone Harbor, New Jersey, according to court documents, a father and son duo spotted the large white Coleman cooler bobbing in the ocean. They pulled it aboard, and well, they noticed it was riddled with bullet holes. Clearly, someone had tried to sink it, hoping this thing would never be found. The fishermen, in true fashion, because some fishermen are the Fred Sanford of the sea. Sometimes they find things and they take it home, which is what these folks did. Until more details had come out in the news, these folks notified the authorities of what they found. There's a lot of information raising the alarm. While all of this is going on, investigators are learning more information about Tommy Boy. During this point, no one knows the investigators are in possession of the diary. And during the investigation, family and friends is letting it all fly. They're sharing everything about Tom showering Anne Marie with gifts. But that came at a price. She had to give up her autonomy. He was using gifts as a way of control. He was doing what we talked about in the beginning, flexing his power. And the more she gotten involved with Tom, the more withdrawn she became with her family and friends. Straight out of a manipulator's playbook, alienating you from your friends and family because they don't want nobody around you telling you what I'm doing to you. Typical. Authorities don't have an option. With all of this information, like it or not, we have to go talk to the man himself, Thomas J. Capano. They don't have a choice. We're not talking about a lawyer fresh off the bench trying to make a name for himself or some ambulance chaser, and he's affiliated with all of the top brass. He's amongst the Wilmington, Delaware elites. Detectives questioned Tom. Were they delicate? Of course they were. Tom is a former state prosecutor. They knew Tom would lawyer up quick if pressed too hard. He admitted having dinner with Anne Marie that night, but he insisted he drove her home safely and dropped her off afterwards. Besides, it's not like he can get around that fact. You're in a public place. Also, during the investigation, the waitstaff at Ristorante Panorama confirmed that Tom and Anne Marie visited their establishment last Thursday. Seemed like a quiet couple, nothing uneventful. The simple fact of the matter is, Tom is not the average suspect. They're not going to lean on Tom the way they would lean on you or me. They're not going to burst through Tom's door of his mansion between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., snatching him out of bed. Yeah, that'll happen to you and me with no problem. That's how they do things. But with Tom, he has too many notches on his belt for anything like that to happen to him. They treated him the way his status is. You don't get that treatment. I wouldn't get that treatment. But he got the treatment. Now, I'm not saying that I'm angry or anything. These are just the facts. And there you have it. Another interview, another let him loose. Then Tom gets called down for another line of questioning because he wasn't being sweated. Tom was treated comfortably. Tom's arrogance began to shine through during the interrogation. He was completely dismissive of the entire situation, nonchalant. It was almost as if Tom was being bothered. The arrogance was palpable. Tom knew in this arena, he's virtually untouchable. And because they didn't have anything, the case didn't go anywhere. They had to cut him loose. But unfortunately for Tommy Boy, this is above local authorities. Therefore, the FBI have to get involved. All of the normal tactics that they use, it would work on anybody else. Not here, not now. It's not adding up. Clearly, this is, if nothing else, corruption at the highest levels. Something has to be done. A person missing from the governor's office that involves foul play that points to one of the top elite lawyers, well-connected, well-respected, rich, powerful. The eyes of the nation is starting to look at the state. Oh yeah, we have to get the FBI in on this. Tom was shielded by a team of lawyers, and because they didn't have anything, he began doing his normal day-to-day operation and whatever that entailed. Because as far as he was concerned, remember, there's no weapon, no body, no witnesses, no evidence. And he has the wealth to wiggle his toes peacefully at night. So it's safe to say he was sleeping pretty good. So he went about his day normally. When you're the number one suspect in a high-profile missing persons case, there's no such thing as normal. There's no such thing as coincidence. So the investigators began working quietly behind the scenes, collecting that circumstantial evidence. All of the purchases during and around the time of the disappearance. And you know something? It all began to tell a story that deviated from the one Tommy Boy shared. Financial forensics was able to uncover months before Anne Marie's disappearance. Tom's actions painted a picture of preparation. On April 20th, 1996, he bought a large white Coleman cooler, one that he could not produce. Coincidentally, it's identical to the ones the fishermen pulled out of the ocean at Stone Harbor, New Jersey. Whoops. On May 13th, 1996, he persuaded his longtime mistress to purchase a .22 caliber on his behalf. Now hang on for a minute. Let's pause for the cause. That's called a straw purchase, sir, and that's illegal. Why don't you buy it? You the lawyer, not me. But moving on, investigators knew they couldn't sweat Tom. Tom wasn't breaking, and he stopped talking. He protected himself behind a wall of lawyers. This is where Tom slipped and fell on his own arrogance. They ultimately shared with Tom. As the police combed through Anne Marie's apartment, they found a small book on her nightstand, her diary. Inside were raw confessions of fear, despair, and desperate attempts to break free from you, baby. Oh, wait, that look on your face. You didn't know she had a... Oh, you didn't know she had a diary, huh, baby? Since we're in this interview and you don't want to talk, just wanted to give you something you can mull over on your way home. So we'll talk to you later, baby. So naturally, that didn't sit well with Tom. And yes, Tom did have a lot to think about that night. So what did they do? They implemented the John Gotti strategy. Exactly what they did to John Gotti, they did the same thing to Tom. We're going to put pressure on the people around you. After interviewing Tom's family, they zeroed in on his brothers, particularly on his closest brother, the young one, Jerry. It's always a Jerry. Anyway, it was always... Jerry had always been close to Tom. At first, Jerry denied involvement in everything. And lo and behold, when they have that conversation about doing time, that talk hit different because Jerry grew up rich, never been in a conflict a day in his life. You got those soft hands. You're going to go in the bank, baby. You're going to end up putting money on everybody's books. Are you a suspect or are you a witness? Do you want to go to jail? Do you want to go home? Talk to us, baby. Choice is yours. You start looking at your lawyer and your lawyer look back at you with "I can't help you" face. Oh man, the air get tight. The room get real small real quick. You know, you start twitching from the itching, squirming from the burning. All of a sudden, everything in your stomach turned to juice. You got gas. You keep looking at the door, waiting for somebody to tell you you can leave. You start shaking your head. You start sweating. Things start to look a little, the room, you start catching asthma. Your CD starts skipping. You was what? You was what? Now they got you. What you gonna do, baby? What you gonna do? But anyway, under pressure, Jerry broke. Well, I was what? Jerry admitted. Tom called me a few days after Anne Marie vanished. I didn't know what was going on. I don't have no idea how Jerry was shaking, but he was shaking. You can listen to Jerry's interview online. I did. So anyway, here's Jerry, right? Now that I think about it, it was around the time she disappeared, either late June, early July. Tom called me, asking for help to move some furniture. And together, they removed and disposed of a sofa and a rug. But they didn't just dispose of it. They chopped it up into pieces, both the sofa and the rug. Now, there's nothing strange about that at all. People do that all the time, just so it can fit into the dumpster. Because we don't have the money to pay for a proper disposal. The Capano family owned thousands of properties and tons of construction equipment. Of all of the people you have working for you, you couldn't have found anybody else to help you. I'm not saying that the outcome would have been any different had there been anybody else to help, because the investigators would have found them eventually. I'm going to tell you immediately. Huh? You want me to do what? Straight up, man, you know me, I would help you, but I got a bad back. And when the investigators learned of this information, they immediately located the dumpster behind the shopping center in Delaware. The pizzas had already been transported to the facility, compacted, and buried beyond reach. But they still gave it a valiant effort searching through the debris in the landfill. But that's not all. This is where the cooler becomes a critical piece of the investigation. Jerry also shared with investigators that the most disturbing task of all, outside of cutting up the furniture and disposing it in the dumpsters, together they carried a heavy white cooler aboard Tom's boat that seemed like it had a body inside. Tom never opened the cooler. Under the cover of darkness, Tom had riddled the cooler with bullet holes. They dumped it into the ocean, believing it would sink. But the sea did not keep his secret. Days later, a fisherman pulled that same cooler from the waves on July 4th. The same model that Tom had purchased but could not produce. According to Jerry's testimony, that is the exact cooler that was pulled from the ocean by the fisherman. And it told the story of Anne Marie's final resting place, because her remains were never located. But investigators tried tracking down the sofa and the rug Tom and his brother had discarded. By the time they learned of it, the pieces had already been hauled off to the landfill, compacted and buried beyond reach. Now, during the last interview the investigators shared with Tom, as police combed through Anne Marie's apartment, they found a small book on her nightstand. That small book happened to be her diary. And it was a day-by-day, play-by-play of situations that she was dealing with. And inside, she also wrote about the fear, the manipulation, control, and all of her desperate attempts to get away from you, baby. Tom, being a former state prosecutor, he understands that's a roadmap to a motive. There's no getting around that. Then he learns of Jerry's full confession. Thanks, Jerry. Now, what does Tom do? Through a team of lawyers, he reached out to the investigators to come to his home so he can go through a reenactment of what happened, but on his own terms. Now, how you do... Oh, never mind. So the investigators say, okay, cool, we'll be there on the arranged time and date, and you can go through the reenactment on what happened. During the reenactment, Tom pointed to the chairs, the movements, and he spoke with so much confidence, it was almost arrogant. The guy really just can't get out of his own way with this arrogance. It's ridiculous. Neither here nor there. Tom continued to speak with so much confidence. He spoke like a man directing a story. It was nothing to him, almost like a play. It looked more like a theater performance. Now, Tom, being the brilliant lawyer that he is, or at this point, being the brilliant lawyer that he was, he didn't think this through. You went from not knowing what happened, this is the truth this time. Now that you understand the walls are closing in, now this is the truth. Now you want to give us the truth of what really happened. Okay, Tommy boy. What happened? The whole reenactment looked like a staged scene, but it had a reverse effect. It completely damaged Tom's credibility. What Tom tried to do and what he actually did are two different things. He tried to control the narrative, but you gave too many versions of the truth, and the more Tom went through the scenario of what happened, this entire performance was indeed recorded, and it would later become an official record. Now, you definitely not getting out of this one, Tommy boy. See you at trial, Tom. Thanks. This wasn't just another criminal case. By the time the trial opened in late 1998, Wilmington, Delaware was transfixed. Reporters filled the benches, sketch artists recorded every glance. It was the city's most prominent lawyer, a man of political influence and connections, sitting in the defendant's chair, accused of this horrendous crime involving the governor's scheduling secretary. Anne Marie's family and friends sat in quiet anguish, while members of the Capano family appeared stone-faced, supporting Tom and yet divided by what they knew. Jurors can feel the weight of the room. The public could feel the weight of history being made. To prosecutors, the missing pieces of furniture that were never recovered, they weren't old household items Tom wanted to get rid of because he was remodeling his home. They were also evidence that was erased forever in another attempt to bury the truth. So Dum Dum did something right because to that end, those pieces were never recovered. Outside of Jerry being the main star witness, tying all the pieces together, all right, Jerry, the most powerful witnesses never spoke a word. It was a battered cooler, chained and riddled with bullet holes, that washed ashore told investigators what Tom Capano hoped the ocean would conceal forever. Its silence was damning proof of a desperate attempt to erase a life. And another powerful witness that never spoke a word, Anne Marie's diary that she left behind, her own testimony. In the private lines of her diary, she described a man who frightened her. Her own words became haunting echoes throughout the courtroom. Quote, I am scared. I feel trapped. I don't know how to free myself of him. End quote. Together, these silent witnesses, the cooler, the diary, the fragile words of Anne Marie's own hand became the chorus of truth. They haunted Tom Capano in ways no cross-examination could, binding him to the reality he tried to deny. A cooler bobbing along the waves, a diary hidden in plain sight, two voices speaking louder than any defense. What captivated the audience wasn't only the missing of evidence, it was the missing of a body and a weapon. The damaged cooler, the brother's damning testimony. Thanks, Jerry. It was truly a spectacle, watching power and privilege get stripped bare in the defendant's chair. For Wilmington, Delaware, the trial was more than a prosecution. This was the bill coming due. It was a reckoning. On January 17, 1999, after weeks of testimony and days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Guilty, first degree. The courtroom fell silent. For Tom Capano, pride comes before the fall. Once a polished attorney and political insider, and the fall was complete. The trial moved into the most dramatic stage, sentencing. Prosecutors pressed for Tom's death, arguing that Anne Marie's end was calculated, cruel, and concealed with chilling precision. The defense pleaded for mercy, portraying Tom as a brother, a father, a man whose life still had value. Of course it does. Families sat on opposite sides of the room. Anne Marie's loved ones bracing for closure that truly never comes. Tom's relatives staring down the unthinkable. Jurors listened again. This time, not to weigh guilt, but to weigh life. On March 16, 1999, a judge imposed the ultimate penalty. Tommy Boy will have a date with lethal injection. The sentencing made history in Delaware and headlines across the nation. A stunning climax to Delaware's most infamous trial. But appeals and legal battles would follow, stretching into the next decade until Tom's lethal injection sentence was overturned and replaced with life without parole. That's a long time. For the Fahey family, the words life without parole carried no comfort. They never recovered her remains. They would never see her again. And for Wilmington, the case had forever changed the way a city saw its most powerful lawyer. No longer admired, but condemned. Remembered, not for his influence or prestige or power, but for his arrogance, not being able to accept rejection and taking someone's life. But wait, there's more. On September 19, 2011, inside a jail cell at the James T. Vaughn Correctional Center, located in Smyrna, Delaware, the story of Thomas Capano came to an unceremonious end. Once a celebrated lawyer, a political insider, a man who dined with the governors and courted influence, he closed his eyes for the last time and passed on. As an inmate serving life without parole, guards making morning rounds found him unresponsive. There was no violence, no dramatic escape, and no last attempt to control the narrative. Medical reports pointed to natural causes, a heart attack at the age of 61. The death brought no justice, only finality. For Anne Marie Fahey's family, it marked the closing of a chapter, but not the return of a daughter, a sister, a friend. For the state of Delaware, it was a grim reminder that even power, prestige, and privilege cannot shield a man from the weight of truth. In the end, Thomas Joseph Capano left behind no legacy of brilliance in the law, no honorable remembrance. What remains is the haunting absence of Anne Marie, a battered cooler, and a diary still whispering from the past. His death was quiet, but the echoes of his crime will never be. But, wait, there's more. When Tom closed his eyes behind bars in 2011, he left behind an immense fortune. As we already discussed, the Capano name, once a symbol of success, became a source of bitter conflict. Brothers who had testified against him, relatives who chose to stand by him, all turned to the same courts to fight over what remained. Lawsuits surfaced, probate files opened, and the Capano name, already scarred by the scandal, was dragged once again through Delaware's headlines. Arguments were waged over properties, accounts, and a tangled web of trusts Tom had left behind. For a family once known for its influence, the spectacle of infighting only deepened a sense of downfall, already marred by death and betrayal, closed not with unity or dignity, but with relatives battling over wealth. Which is crazy because they all have money, but you know something? They're no different than everybody else. Everybody turns into an animal over money. It's crazy. In the end, the legacy Tom left his family was not honor, security, or stability, but division, a final reminder of his reach, his control, and his ruin extended even beyond the grave. Apparently, you didn't have your own affairs in order. Go ahead, dum-dum.